Thank you, SOCAR and organizer Minister Shahbazov, for a chance to be with you again this year. My name is Matthew Bryza. I served as ambassador to Azerbaijan 12 years ago, but I began attending what became Bakı Energy Week, I think, in 1998. That's how old I am. And I just want to remark that this current edition is like on a different planet. So much has happened in these intervening years, these 25 years, quarter century. Azerbaijan's economy has developed so much, the poverty level has plummeted from 50% to 5%. And now Azerbaijan stands atop the world stage as the co-leader this year of the global energy transition. And as we'll hear in a moment from Minister Shahbazov, Azerbaijan is not just mouthing a bunch of slogans, but is living the transition as it strives to reduce its consumption of fossil fuels to be able to export more natural gas to the EU by relying more and more on renewable energy. But I will stop talking now and I'd like to invite Minister of Energy of Azerbaijan, Parviz Shahbazov, to deliver the opening address. Thank you.
Excellencies, dear forum participants, ladies and gentlemen. 30 years ago, when Azerbaijan announced the oil strategy authored by the great leader Heydar Aliyev and signed the contract of the century, we were aspiring to achieve energy security as well as stability and development in the region through the energy resources of the Caspian Sea. 30 years later, our goal remains the same: to ensure energy security and sustainable development in the region and beyond. This time, the huge renewable energy potential of Azerbaijan, its great potential in the Caspian Sea, had been added to this process. Yesterday, with presence of President of Azerbaijan, Mr. Ilham Aliyev, we held a groundbreaking of 2 solar and 1 wind power plants with a total capacity of 1,000 megawatt. This remarkable achievement demonstrates our country's commitment to the green energy transition. As a traditional energy supplier and a proud host of COP29, Azerbaijan is developing all types of energy resources with the goals of ensuring reliability of energy supply, as well as reducing emissions for climate-resilient pathways. This approach to conventional and clean energy is also one of the important conditions for a just, orderly, and equitable transition, as highlighted in the COP28 consensus. During COP29, we will engage with all international partners to advance climate action and transitioning to green energy. Our renewed strategic energy partnership with the European Union, expansion plans of the Southern Gas Corridor, and Azerbaijan joining the Solidarity Ring initiative will increase volumes and geography of our gas supplies. Our annual gas export to Europe increased from 8.2 BCM to nearly 12 BCM during last 3 years. This year, half of the forecasted 24.3 BCM of gas exports will be supplied to Europe. Expansion of Trans-Adriatic pipeline by 1.2 BCM by 2026 has already been confirmed, with ongoing discussions on further capacity increase. Despite global downtrend in fossil fuel financing and lack of long-term demand guarantees, Azerbaijan remains committed to further increase gas supply to its partners. The development of gas fields, signing of bilateral agreements on gas supply, as well as participation of SOCAR in the conducted non-binding market tests for TAP and Solidarity Ring are reaffirming those commitments. A recent agreement on supply of gas from Azerbaijan and third countries to Turkey and Europe, as well as documents signed yesterday between SOCAR and BOTAŞ, will strengthen our country's position in gas export and transit. This decade will be marked by Azerbaijan's regional leadership in the green energy transition based on vision and initiatives of the President of Azerbaijan, Mr. Ilham Aliyev, to realize green energy and climate goals and to create synergy between traditional and renewable energy. 2 solar and 1 wind power plants of Masdar, construction of which started yesterday, will attract close to $1 billion investments, generate more than 2.3 billion kilowatt hours of electricity, save almost half BCM of gas while reducing emissions by 943,000 tons. Moving forward, the groundbreaking of 2 more solar plants are projected within Green Energy Zone in East Zangezur with BP and Nobel Energy. 240 megawatt Shafak solar project will be a showcase project of decarbonization of oil and gas sectors. Renewable energy from this power station will electrify one of the world's largest oil and gas terminal in Sangachal. This April, we have announced first renewable auction on 100 megawatt solar plant, and the results of the auction will be revealed during COP29. All these actions are also in line with the Green World Solidarity Year 2024, announced by the President of Azerbaijan. By 2027, in the first phase of partnership with energy companies, we are planning to realize close to 2 gigawatts of new renewable volumes, which will increase share of renewables in installed capacity to 33%. Investments of more than $2 billion, production of 5.3 billion kilowatt hours of electricity, saving of 1.2 BCM of gas, reduction of emissions up to 2.5 million tons are expected benefits from those projects. Integration of renewables into the grid, along with the strengthening of the transmission network, are important goals. We are working on installation of the first 50 megawatt storage capacity into the grid and also signed an agreement with Aqua Power for additional 200 megawatt battery system. Dear participants, development of renewable energy in the context of post-conflict reconstruction and diversification of energy sources brings Azerbaijan to the forefront with the initiatives of green energy zones and green energy corridors. Following Karabakh and East Zangezur, the development of Nakhchivan as a green energy zone will be basis for the nationwide energy transition to the net zero. Important developments are underway to establish the Caspian Black Sea Europe Green Energy Corridor by using mostly 157 gigawatt offshore wind potential of the Caspian Sea and to export 4 gigawatt of green electricity and green gases at the initial phase. Within this project, we held 7 ministerial meetings with partner countries, Georgia, Romania, and Hungary. And Bulgaria is also showing interest to this project, joining to all our meetings. First results of the project feasibility study are expected by end of 2024. We are establishing a joint venture with headquarters in Bucharest. We are also discussing the possibility of connecting this corridor to Central Asia. Recently, a memorandum of cooperation has been signed to connect the energy systems of Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan for the transmission of green energy. Cooperation with Turkey is underway for realization of Azerbaijan-Turkey-Europe Green Energy Corridor and export of renewables from Azerbaijani region Nakhchivan to Turkey and further to Europe. As we can see, Azerbaijan plays a bridging and facilitating role to enhance green energy connectivity in the region. The regional context is important for the realization of the global pledge to increase renewable energy by 3 times. Azerbaijan can diversify Europe's energy supply at this stage with green energy and hydrogen, along with additional volumes of natural gas released as a result of deployment of renewables. We believe that strategic role of Azerbaijan in the regional energy cooperation will be further strengthened by success and outcomes of COP29. As Mr. President stated, all our energy projects lead to mutually beneficial cooperation. I wish the forum success and good deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, for fleshing out Azerbaijan's overall strategic approach to developing its own energy resources, to diversifying them as well, to being a reliable supplier and an increasing supplier of natural gas to the European Union, and to, as we were talking about before, co-leading the world's energy transition this year as the chair of COP29. I would like to come back to you in a moment with a question, Minister Shahbazov, which will be about what maybe not a lot of the people in the audience have yet had a chance to appreciate, which is the enormous undertaking of Azerbaijan now to reconstruct its recovered territories, often from scratch, which begins with providing energy sources, but also all the elements required to create a quality of life that will attract people back to these regions. But before that, we have the pleasure and honor to hear from the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Hungary, Mr. Peter Szijjártó, who I think, based upon his compelling speech in Tokyo 2 weeks ago, is going to provide us a sense of Hungary's, let's say a Hungary first policy. I come from a country where we had America's first policy. So Hungary's efforts to make sure it has the energy supplies it needs as a key member of the European Union. Mr. Minister.
Good morning to all of you. Thank you so much. Matthew, thank you, Parvis, for the invitation. Some short remarks from my side. Unfortunately, it's not an exaggeration anymore that we are living in the age of dangers and crises, and the world has been full of tremendous conflicts, and these conflicts are bringing forward the risk of the world being divided into blocks again, and we unfortunately have a historic experience how to live between or almost between blocks, and this is something that we don't want to see be returning. And we also see that this chance of the world being divided into blocks again brings forward a tremendous risk of the safe supply of energy, globally speaking. Unfortunately, we see the issue of safety of energy supply being dragged into these international political conflicts. We see ideological debates overburdening the issue of energy supply. So therefore, our number one goal, if we speak about experts and professionals, and it's you, not me, I think the number one goal should be to get rid of the ideological approach, to get rid of the political debates when it comes to energy supply. And let's come back to common sense, and let's make sure that energy supply is being considered as an issue of physical and mathematical nature, and not philosophical and ideological one. We do believe that it's a fair and well-based policy of Hungary that we reject all kind of ideological approach when it comes to guaranteeing the safe supply of energy of Hungary. We reject any kind of ideological approach. We reject any kind of interference. And we do believe that guaranteeing the safe supply of our country is a matter of sovereignty. But when it comes to the question how we can ensure safe and sustainable supply of energy globally under the current challenging security circumstances, I think there are three preconditions. First, we have to get rid of the continued negative discrimination against nuclear energy. Second, we have to get rid of this very aggressive pressure to phase out natural gas from our national energy mixes. And third, that we have to get rid of all those artificial measures which restrict the hurdle-less, fair and free international energy cooperation. Just three very short remarks on these three issues. First, when it comes to discrimination against nuclear energy, we have to understand that based on the fact that transportation is now being transformed to electric basis, based on the fact that the demand for heating and cooling systems has been increasing, and based on the fact that the industrial output globally is increasing, we will need twice as much electricity within 6 years than currently. And when we raise the question how we can ensure a big volume of electricity in a reliable, in a sustainable, in an environmentally friendly, safe and cheap way, the only answer is nuclear. We need nuclear in order to make sure that we can supply the ever-increasing global demand of electricity in the future. We in Europe are fighting for this because there's a big ideological pressure on nuclear, led by Germany. Thanks God, now there's a nuclear coalition led by France, which is a very important professional argument in this regard. Therefore, we hope that we can be successful in the future to maintain the sustainable classification of nuclear in the future. By the way, we are building two new nuclear reactors. When we connect them to the grid, we will be able to decrease our emission by 17 million tons of CO2 annually. That's why I always laugh at the arguments of the Greens against nuclear, because my question is, what can be more green than the nuclear investment of ours? Second point, the very aggressive pressure is out there to phase out gas from our national energy mixes. We find it artificial, we find it absolutely not realistic, we find it ideological, and we find it as a very aggressive push against our competitiveness, which can end up in a rapidly growing energy prices. Therefore, instead of pushing us to get rid of gas, what we should do is to develop infrastructure. Develop infrastructure, develop the delivery routes in order to make it possible that we diversify our energy sources, our gas sources. There's a lot of pressure on us in Europe to diversify. The problem is that we have different definitions of diversification. Our definition of diversification is that we have more sources. And we don't agree with the definition, which is like replacement of already existing sources with others. No, diversification means more sources. That's why we asked the European Union to increase the capacity of the pipeline network in Southeast Europe to enable us to buy more gas from Azerbaijan, from Qatar, from Turkey, with whom we have or have contracts or contracts are under preparation. But without increasing the capacity of this pipeline network in Southeast Europe, we will not be able to diversify. And you know, we hear the counter-argument, saying that gas is not going to be part of the national energy mixes in 15 years. Now we don't agree with that. Who knows what's going to happen next year? The question is not who knows what's going to happen in 15 years. And even if it was right that gas is not going to be part of the energy mix in 15 years, I still would like to draw the attention to the fact that there are still 14 winters to go. So therefore, the expression unnecessary infrastructure should not exist in our vocabularies. And my last point, the third, on the restriction of the international energy cooperations. So you see that in Europe, because of the war in Ukraine, we have been faced with a tremendous pressure to cut our energy relations with Russia. You know, the thing is that whenever you restrict or whenever you limit international energy cooperation, it can easily end up in disturbances of supply or in price increase. And we Europeans have experienced it in 2022 big time. Our national energy bill of imports has increased from 7 billion euros to 17 billion euros. 10 billion euros extra expenditure, which we don't want to see returning in Hungary. Therefore, we reject any kind of sanctions on energy, and we found it outrageous that there are attempts now in Europe to prepare possible customs and tariffs being put on energy sources to make it more expensive for certain countries to ensure the safe supply of theirs. We find this is outrageous and this is absolutely unacceptable for us. When we do buy energy sources, we don't make these decisions on political basis. Buying energy from this or that country is not a political statement for us. It's a matter of national sovereignty and rationality. Where we can get the energy sources cheaper and more reliable, we buy it from there. And lastly, I'd like to say, Matthew, that there's still a hope. There's still a hope that common sense will come back. Because I'm personally responsible for the construction of our new nuclear power plant, where the head constructor, the main constructor, is Rosatom from Russia. But if you go to the site now, you will see American, German, and French subcontractors working very happily for Rosatom and getting tens of millions of euros from them. So that shows to me that even if politicians are making sometimes crazy statements on the level of the everyday life, on the level of professional energy, there's still a hope for common sense and international cooperation, which will allow us at least to speak about the hope of safe and sustainable supply of global energy in the future. Thank you so much for the kind invitation, and thank you so much for the kind attention.
Thank you again, Mr. Minister, for another compelling explanation of Hungary's perspective on the importance of diversifying sources of energy, meaning nuclear, maintaining natural gas, and also taking politics, if possible, out of energy supply decisions. And I think we're going to probably discuss that a bit more with our representatives of the European Commission and as well as a European Union member state. So I'd like to, at this point, open up the discussion a bit more to bring into the discussion, here sitting to my left, Tina Session, who's Deputy Minister of the Environment, Climate and Energy for the Republic of Slovenia, and Cristina Lobio Borrero, who's Director of the Energy Platform Task Force and International Relations Director General, or DG Energy, for the European Commission. But before I do, Minister Shahbazov, could you speak a little bit more about, again, this huge task of rebuilding the recovered lands of Azerbaijan and turning them into green energy zones? And what will, you talked about it, you mentioned the green energy zones. Could you elaborate a bit? Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. First of all, I would like underline indeed the great works which are right now being implemented in the newly liberated areas. And as President Aliyev declared those territories the green energy zone, a special concept has been developed by us to award the status of the green zone to these territories, to the Karabakh and the Eastern Zangezur economic rayons. And what does it mean? Let me just underline two most important components. First of all, in this territory, there will be no fossil fuel used for the generation of electricity. And the green energy which is going to be produced on those territories should 100% cover all demand which we have there, and even more, the excess production of green energy should be expanded to the other regions of the country. The second component, which consists of the list of green the technologies and application which we are going to use in those territories. It is, beginning from the rooftop solar panels, to the charging systems for the electric cars, and many other things which are very well known to everybody, I mean from the green technologies. So these two the elements are absolutely important, the factors that will make this territory as a green energy zone. And the also main idea behind that is later on, first to create the benchmark here, later on to create the same rules for the entire territory of Azerbaijan, just to extend it to the whole territory of the Republic.
Well, so just to underscore that vision, it's revolutionary. So Azerbaijan, as you know, recovered its 7 territories as well as the region of Nagorno-Karabakh, from which 800,000 people had been displaced. Azerbaijan used to have the largest percentage of displaced persons of any country. And so now in that gargantuan rebuilding task, as Minister just said, there will be the aspiration is no fossil fuels used to generate electricity, so all renewable energy, and then use that approach to speed the energy transition across Azerbaijan. Well, that's quite impressive. At the same time, Azerbaijan remains such an impressive or important supplier of natural gas to the European Union. Maybe I'll turn to Christina to speak more about the strategic energy partnership between the European Union and Azerbaijan, part of which, of course, includes this sort of transition to renewable energy we were just talking about with Minister Shahbazov, but also includes Azerbaijan doubling its supplies of natural gas to the European Union, I guess by 2027, from the current goal of 10 BCM per year to 20 BCM. Christina.
Thank you very much, Matthew, and dear ministers, dear deputy minister, participants in this panel. Thank you very much, first of all, for having invited the Commission and in particular the Department of Energy to participate in this session today. And congratulations for the excellent organization as ever. So thank you very much for this question, and this is one of the reasons why we are here participating in the Energy Baku Week. We have a very important and significant, I will say, strategic partnership with Azerbaijan. This partnership is not new. We started some years ago working in particular when the Southern Gas Corridor started building, but has a quite more strategic dimension with the energy crisis in the European Union. We all know that we had in the European Union a very serious energy crisis created by the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Our energy crisis had 2 dimensions: energy security, security of supply basically on gas, and also energy prices. So we work on different fronts just to tackle this crisis. We adopted in 1 year 6 regulatory packages just to tackle the crisis. And we also launched a very, I would say, intense diplomatic work with our reliable international partners to replace the Russian gas in the European Union, and also to intensify our dialogue on energy transition. And Azerbaijan is a very clear example of that. With Azerbaijan, our 2 presidents, President Aliyev and President of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, they signed a memorandum of understanding a little bit more 2 years ago. And this MOU focused basically on helping the European Union on the gas supply. So we have today Azerbaijan supplies the European Union with a little bit more on 11 BCM of gas. And in this MOU, there is a target just to achieve 20 BCM by 2027. And we are working very intensively with Azerbaijan to make it happen. On the other hand, we also have a very significant work on the energy transition. And I think this is something that I want to highlight because the example that we have with Azerbaijan working in parallel on the Green Corridor, on how we can compare note, exchange experiences, on how we could achieve and accelerate this energy transition. And I want to insist on the word transition, because obviously the transition needs time, and gas in the European Union is still needed. We have our gas consumption very clearly published in our communication for the 2040 target. And we know that we need to continue importing gas in the European Union. But we want also to improve how this gas is produced. So for the first time ever, we have adopted in the European Union a regulation on how to abate methane emissions. And this is a new work that we have started. And again, coming back to the energy transition, with all international partners where we have relation on gas supply, we also have open dialogues on energy transition. And I want to mention not only Azerbaijan, but also Norway, the US, Algeria, and other countries that supply gas to the European Union. We also discuss on how to further deploy renewables, how to improve energy efficiency, and how to accelerate the energy transition. In the European Union in 2023, in parallel with the replacement of Russian fuels, we also increase our renewable capacity in the European Union by 71 gigawatts, and this year we plan to increase to 79. So we work in parallel, security of supply with more reliable partners to the European Union, and also accelerating the energy transition. And again, Azerbaijan is a very reliable partner to the European Union, and we are very happy to prove here that we are working on these two dimensions. So gas, but also energy transition with the Green Corridor and all the steps that are needed to achieve that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Christina. There are many points to highlight. I mean, the continuing need for natural gas in the European Union. Maybe we can come back later to how that continued supply, though, allows investments to be funded if there is a sunset in aspirations in the European Union, like in the United States, about at some point not using natural gas. But we can come back to that in a moment. But I'd like to pick up on your point about the European Union feeling it had no choice but to diversify its supplies of natural gas, picking up on Minister Siarto's point, not because the European Union did not want to necessarily consume gas from Russia, but because before Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, it started reducing supplies to the European Union. And for many years, many of us in this room have worked with our European allies, with Azerbaijan, to make sure that there really is optionality on the table for European gas consumers. And I know you, Tina, had been working on that for a long time, back to, as we discussed before we came out here, back during the Slovenian Republic's presidency of the European Council in 2008. So I'd love to hear your perspective, your reaction to this. It's not a debate, but the aspiration not to reduce supplies of natural gas, but then facing this geopolitical reality whereby natural gas is a politicized commodity. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew, and hello from my side as well, Minister Shabazo. Thank you for hosting us, Peter, Christina. I'm really happy to be here with you to actually to give a perspective of one of the smallest EU member states. We are to give this what we have been going through and where we see Azerbaijan as an important partner, not only for the European Union but also for Slovenia. Slovenia is basically an energy dwarf in the European Union. Just to give you a feeling, we consume much less than 1% of the natural gas that is consumed in the EU. But as Peter pointed out in his introductory remarks, at the national level, it's of utmost importance. You have to get that secure supply, you have to have it at a competitive price, and you have to make sure that your industry and your heating is up and running. And as we have seen this dramatic change in the geopolitical landscape, I think diversification truly gained a new meaning for my country, traditionally being more or less completely dependent on Russian supply. We face this new reality, how to diversify, how to find new partners, how to find new sources. And in this sense, I'm really happy that Azerbaijan has formed this partnership with the European Union years ago so that we can now come in and build upon this relationship. And through this relationship, we find new partners, new sources, and secure our supply. And of course, looking forward, international cooperation not just about energy supply, it is also important for the green transition, as Christina mentioned. And Slovenia is a strong supporter of climate neutrality, and it's strongly committed to support the multilateral effort in this aspect. And I really congratulate the Azerbaijani presidency of the climate change conference taking place this year here, and you have our support, and we will work with you, and of course through the European Union framework to have meaningful results of this conference. And of course, moving beyond the multilateral aspect to a purely bilateral cooperation, I was really inspired to hear your speech, Minister Shahbazov. I see that we have really a lot in common when we speak about energy policies delivering the climate neutrality. And in this sense, I recognize that we both have a lot of potential to grow, to create new partnerships beyond the purely gas supply issue. What we can offer to you and also to the broader region, we have a know-how in solar, in hydro, in smart grid deployment. We are one of the best in smart grids deployment in the EU. We have the largest production of solar panels in the EU. You won't believe it, but it's true. We have the second largest production of components that are needed for the safe operation of the solar power panels. So this is what we can bring, know-how and an exchange to the region. On the other side, for example, this year we are phasing out coal from one of the largest district heating systems in Slovenia. We are switching to gas this year. And in this sense, we are definitely in need of new partners for supply and for diversified supply chain of gas. So I will stop here with my introductory remarks, and I wish you all a very good day, and thank you once again for great organization of this forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. The point about the transition from coal-fired power to gas-fired is really an important one. We've seen in many countries how much carbon emissions have decreased when switching from coal to gas. In my own country, in the United States, there was, after the so-called shale revolution, a very interesting thing happened. So whereas Germany had invested so much since the 1980s in the Energiewende, in developing renewable energy technologies, great for all the world, thank goodness, and the U.S. hadn't. Germany had, of course, signed up to the Kyoto Protocol. The U.S. never did. But once the U.S. started producing such low-cost natural gas, thanks to fracking and horizontal drilling, the United States shifted much of its power generation to much cleaner natural gas. And it ended up meeting the Kyoto targets that it never signed up to, or never ratified. Whereas Germany, which had rightfully invested so much in renewable energy, ended up buying U.S. coal that was displaced because of the abundant U.S. gas, and ended up not meeting its Kyoto Protocol targets. So that's, to me, a very powerful set of facts about how natural gas absolutely has to be a transition fuel, and how moving away from coal to natural gas is extremely helpful. So natural gas remains so important, yes, in terms of the energy transition, but also politically. So I wanted to go back, if I can, to you, Mr. Minister, Minister Siarto. Did I unfairly pose a false choice between having as much natural gas coming, let's say, to Hungary as possible from all sources versus the European Union's desire to get away from one supplier, from Russian natural gas? Is it a false choice that I'm outlining?
Look, the current state of play of science does not allow us to rely on gas deliveries in backpacks and sports bags. Therefore, we still do need the pipelines as the delivery routes. Therefore, the pipelines do determine the delivery directions. And currently, if I look at the incoming capacities of the pipelines of natural gas to Hungary, I have to say that without the Russian gas, Hungary's safe supply cannot be guaranteed. And not because of politics or ideology, but because of mathematics. We have a certain demand annually, 9 to 10 BCM, depending on the annual circumstances. We can produce like 1.5 BCM maximum on our own. The rest, we do have to import. And putting into consideration the regional reality, without imports from Russia, currently, physically and mathematically, it's not possible to supply our country. It would be possible to reduce the share of Russian imports in our national energy mix in case we would be able to deliver more gas from Azerbaijan, from Qatar and from Turkey. This year is the first year, an important milestone. This year is the first year ever that we bought gas physically from SOCAR. This year is the first year ever that we bought gas physically from Turkey. We became the first non-neighboring country for Turkey who imports Turkish gas. And we have ongoing negotiations with Qatar that from 2027, as they have new sources, let's put it this way, or some release contracts, or contracts expiring, we would be able to include Qatari gas into our energy system as well. The problem is in between Hungary and these countries, not politically, but geographically. Because the pipeline network in the Southeast European region, through Turkey, Bulgaria, Romania, Serbia, simply cannot deliver more gas than the current situation. Simply, mathematically. So we would need a couple billions of cubic meters of extra capacity in order to make it possible for the countries of Central Europe, including Slovakia, Hungary, Serbia, Romania, to increase the gas from this region in our national energy mix. Now, therefore, we have a program so-called Solidarity Ring, including these countries. Azerbaijan is supporter of this strategy, obviously, because Azerbaijani gas would be partly filling this strategy. But the problem is that it's a multiple hundreds of millions of euro investment, which the countries impacted cannot manage on their own. And not to speak about the fact that this is a European issue. Why? Because we are under constant political pressure to decrease the share of Russian gas in our national energy mix. Now my question is the following. This is not a political issue, because with political statements you cannot deliver gas. You can only deliver gas in a pipeline network. So please then help to increase the capacity. So on one hand we have the political pressure. On the other hand, we are faced with rejection when it comes to, increasing the capacity. So then what to do? And my responsibility as a member of the government who is responsible for the international energy cooperation is to make sure that at the end of the day, the Hungarian people can heat their houses and flats, can ensure hot water, and the factories have enough gas. And since there are not enough press conferences with which I can, produce gas, therefore I need it realistically. And then what to do? Continue the ongoing cooperation. And I have to tell you, and it's not a political statement again, this is a reality, that I've been dealing with this issue for 10 years now as being foreign minister for the 10th year. I don't remember any occasion when we would have been let down by the Russian suppliers. So then my question is why I should cut the relationship? Out of politics? Why? Out of physics? It's impossible. So, we are there where we started. So let's come back to common sense and reality. And I understand that currently it's very complicated to get rid of this approach because there's war in Ukraine. Europe is faced with tremendous challenges, politically, economically, energy, security, everything. But at least the issue of energy supply should be liberated from this ideological and political approach.
Thank you, Minister. As a former professional football player, you beautifully passed the ball to Christina, who I'd like to ask about the Commission's view and the entire European Union's view on how best to secure those increased supplies of natural gas that the Minister was just saying are needed through the infrastructure investments. I mean, the TANAP pipeline needs a lot of investment to expand. The interconnection at Malčika-Stranja between Turkey and Bulgaria also needs to expand. Minister Bayraktar has directed the Turkish Energy Ministry to invest to increase the capacity from 3 to 15 BCM. But to finance those investments, the investors need to know that there's going to be in place a longer-term sales purchase agreement. And so how does that play out in the European Union, whereby there is an aspiration to reduce investments or stop investing in natural gas, but there's a need for those investments now and in the next few years to get more gas in a diversified way away from Russia? Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew, yes, well, maybe two comments just to reply to these questions. And one is very much related also to Russian gas and the political commitment that the European Union took about not only reducing but to completely phase out the Russian gas by 2027. But obviously this is a process. Maybe so far I wanted to give you some figures. Traditionally we imported 90% of the gas that we consume in the European Union. 45% was Russian. Today this percentage has been reduced to 15%. So there is still Russian gas in the system. We are in this process. But obviously two important comments here. In the European Union, we are fully committed to achieve our decarbonization by 2050, where we plan to have 80% of electrification. But in the meantime, we need to replace this Russian gas by other sources, as I was mentioning in my first intervention. So we have increased, in particular, LNG supplies from the US, but also from other sources. And also Azerbaijan, Algeria, through pipelines. So we are working to diversify, basically. But to diversify and to have new sources of gas in the European Union, we need to do something that is essential, is to adapt our internal infrastructure to get more gas in the European Union in the time, not more gas, but the gas that we need to replace from Russia. You'll know that gas coming from Russia came basically through a pipeline, also LNG. What we have done in the European Union, we are working with, this is a word that is not finalized yet, is try to make sure that the essential interconnections are working in order that gas can flow, in particular in those countries who had more dependency from Russian gas. The question, you say how, obviously we need investment, and I want to mention in particular the REPowerEU. The REPowerEU was the plan that we adopted in the European Union basically to tackle the crisis after the invasion of Ukraine. And we dedicated additional money, in particular to some specific strategic infrastructure on energy. We dedicated 20 billion to that from the EU budget, but also some member states have individually dedicated money to installation of some floating LNG plants in order to get this gas from other sources and to ensure energy security in the European Union. So maybe to sum up, diversification from gas, from other sources that is not Russia, and also our obligation to get our structure, our interconnection adapted to make sure that this gas can flow within the European Union, in particular to those countries that has more dependency from gas. And in this sense, we have also a regulation, our Connecting Europe facility, with a specific project of common interest. Now we are not allowed to finance more projects on gas, but still some of those projects are in the list and will develop the most important in the future. And the second point, we are very transparent on our gas consumption needs over the next 25 years. So these are the two elements I can contribute to your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I sprung that question on you without previewing it, but thank you for a clear and convincing answer. And we are just about out of time, so maybe I could turn to Tina and then Minister Shahbazov to provide any sort of wrap-up comments you might want to synthesize from what you've heard from everybody. Any thoughts? Go ahead, Tina, and then Minister.
Thank you. Well, shortly, just to wrap up, what I hear is that we really need to cooperate and work together to achieve common goals. I think we share more than it seems in first phase, and I am happy that these kind of platforms enable us to meet and discuss and sort of build the road forward, that not just on energy security and gas supply, but also on climate change and transition to a climate-friendly planet. Thank you.
Beautiful. Hard to argue with that. Minister Shahbazov.
Thank you. I'm afraid that I have to come back to this issue a little bit because Christina looking at me. Yeah, indeed. In 2022, we signed the Memorandum of Understanding on the strategic partnership in the field of energy with the European Union. It was done here in Baku between President Aliyev and Madame von der Leyen. And we agreed, among others, also to increase the gas supply to Europe in the coming years. In the past 3 years, as I have already mentioned, we increased our gas supply more than 40%. But we have been expected to do even more. What is the problem? Why we do that in principle? But we have expected from our side also close cooperation with the EU in the issues at least of upgrading the infrastructure and in the issues of concluding the long-term contracts. Because the pipeline gas cannot be delivered just, in principle it can, but in a big volumes, it is very complex to extract, to upgrade the infrastructure, and then come and take all risks on itself, having no confirmation for which price, how it will be sold at the European market. So that's why we continue, as I have already mentioned, 40%, even 45% already that we added in the gas supply annually since the beginning of the 2021. But this is the issue where we need more cooperation, more joint actions. We have very well established energy dialogue with the European Union for many issues. In this specific gas delivery issue, unfortunately, we are not so successful, I have to say the truth, in receiving any support, but we are very successful in the issues of delivering in the future the green energy. And here we have the very good prospects, and we discuss this project very intensively with the EU in the framework of our dialogue. But as I said, with the natural gas, there is some difficulties.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. And it's understandable that there needs to be these longer-term contracts in place to be able to facilitate the investment. But what a changed place, though, the EU-Azerbaijan relationship is now from when I was here as ambassador 12 years ago, when at that time, I remember the EU policy was more for more. Azerbaijan will get more from the EU if it does more on certain reforms. And I remember President Aliyev saying, well, we don't want more. We just want respect and have a mutually beneficial and collaborative relationship, which is the case today. So speaking of which, thank you, ministers. Thank you so much. Tina, thank you, Christina, for a collaborative, a frank, and an insightful discussion where, personally, I learned quite a bit. Thank you very much, and thank you for being with us. So we need to have a very brief, a 5-minute break. Please don't leave your seats unless you have some sort of emergency, and we're just going to swap out the panels. Thank you very much. And next panelist, welcome you to the stage.